Fishing football jigs is a great way to catch big bass. I've been making my own tackle and making my own football jigs for years now. So in today's video, I'm gonna tell you exactly which mold is my favorite mold to make football jigs that flat out catch bass. For anybody new, I am Matt Luna and thank you for watching this video. I've been making my own tackle, whether it's jigs, soft plastics, spinnerbaits, buzzbaits. I've been making tackle for years now, and I totally have fallen in love with the Weedless football jig with holder mold from Doit Molds. I specifically said it that way because that is the exact name of the mold on the Doit Molds website. I have an affiliate link to the Doit Molds website, so if after watching this video you want to pick up any tackle making equipment, whether it's this mold, some of the hooks, or anything that we're talking about in today's video, or you just want to check out tackle making supplies, please go to their website with my affiliate link so they know that I sent you. In this video, we're going to talk about 7 different reasons why this mold in particular is my favorite mold from Doit Molds to make football jigs. So the first reason that we're going to talk about this mold being my favorite is because of the wire keeper. I really like molds that have wire keepers built into the mold. When they don't have it built into the mold, a lot of times I'm going to be adding that in. I'm going to modify the mold a little bit to accept the wire keeper. This mold comes standard with that wire keeper. I really like the wire keeper because it really helps keep your trailer in place on that jig. When you're fishing a jig, you're always putting some sort of soft plastic trailer on there, and having a good keeper really helps everything stay in place and stay on that jig. When you're skipping it, fishing it, ripping it out of grass, it just kind of keeps everything in place. So the second reason that this mold ends up being one of my favorite molds to make jigs is because of the base hole pin. This mold is designed to take a base hole pin, which basically means it gives you a specific spot built into the head of this jig to accept a weed guard after you pour the bait. Having a good weed guard is important on a jig, and then being able to have that specific base hole pin that is designed to accept the weed guard that the mold calls for just makes everything easier, and I really think it comes out as a better jig all said and done from the looks perspective and from the functionality. Another reason why the Doit Molds Weedless football jig with holder mold is one of my favorites is because it accepts a wide variety of hooks. It takes a 60-degree hook eye, which is a very common jig hook. The specific hook that I like to use is the Owner Deep Throat jig hook. I really like that hook. It's not a super heavy wire, but it is super sharp, and I just really like the gap on that hook. It really pins those fish, and I do not lose fish when I get them hooked on this jig. It's one of my favorite hooks to put in this jig mold, and I just have a ton of confidence in that jig hook. It's just the one that I go to all the time. I use a 3/0 in the 1/2 ounce size, and then I use a 4/0 in the 3/4 ounce size, and then if I'm going to make some 3/8 or even 1/4 ounce jigs with this mold, I'm going to use that 3/0 as well. And the next reason that this jig ends up being my favorite jig mold to make football jigs is because of the unique design of the football head itself. If you look closely at this mold, one side of the football jig is actually flat, and at first I wasn't happy with that. But once I gave this jig a shot and started fishing it, I was blown away about how many fish I catch on this jig. And I really think it comes down to that actual head design and how it's flat on one side, because it really helps this jig stand up. Once you put this whole jig together with the skirt and everything on there, the jig literally stands up by itself. So if you're fishing this jig and you're bringing it over rocks, any of that line pressure is gonna make that jig stand up. It's gonna make that jig look like the crawfish that it's imitating is in that defensive position. Because anytime a bass is going to eat a crawfish down off the rocks, that crawdad's gonna get in that defensive position. It's gonna try to jump away, and this really imitates that perfectly. Another great thing about that design is just a little bit of line pressure is gonna make that jig stand up. So anytime you start to drag that jig, you're giving that pressure on that jig, and it's gonna make everything tilt. It's gonna make that jig stand up. So as that jig's moving away, it's in that defensive position, which is mimicking a crawfish perfectly. That hook is in a perfect position, in an upright position to get that hook drove into that fish once they bite and you set the hook. It also gives a much different look than the vast array of people fishing jigs out there. Not a lot of jigs have this same exact head design. So when you're fishing this jig, you're giving those fish a different look than everybody else on the lake, which I think helps you get more bites. And another reason, probably one of the most important reasons that this jig and this jig mold is my favorite, is because it flat out catches fish, guys. I've caught more fish on this jig than any other jig I've thrown in the past. This thing just flat out gets bit. It's got a great profile. I like the recessed eye in this jig as well. And you've seen different clips within this video to show why I like this jig. You've seen fish catches from this jig, and there's a ton of other fish catches that I just don't have on video any longer. Guys, don't forget about the product list that is down in the description of today's video. It's gonna have the different part numbers and everything that I talked about in today's video, along with the affiliate link to Doit molds. If you guys wanna see me make some jigs with this weedless football jig with holder mold from Doit molds, make sure to click on the video that's on the screen right now, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.